Welcome to Awaken Life Radio, a podcast about being a spiritual being, having a human experience in a world gone mad. Each week, we will discuss how you can heal yourself, cultivate your intuitive superpowers, and be a sacred vessel for planetary healing. I am your host, Narayani Gaia. Okay, so here we are starting out laughing, which seems to be a theme of the summer with all the podcasts. Welcome everyone to today's episode of Awaken Life Radio. I am here with the beautiful Ann Moller. Hi, Ann.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're on video, even though y'all are listening in audio. Ann looks really great today. She looks really good in turquoise with hot pink lipstick. And we're not here to just talk about how good she looks. We're here to talk about intuitive awakening, spiritual development, and our work as transformational leaders, and how we can support you today in being inspired on your path, embodied on your path, aligned with your intuition on your path, and to drop some nuggets that we haven't shared before. And so like Ann, or like myself rather, Ann, she's a channel, and the way that we met was this really cute way, which was you were doing this new moon channeling. And I, again, like I told you when we first quote unquote met online, that I don't listen to a lot of like random extra spiritual things because I feel so empathic and already just have my own like few things that I source, and it's overwhelming a lot. So it's enough. Anyway, but I did this channeling and I started getting all these messages for you, and I private messaged Dan, and she's like, when I said give me feedback, I didn't mean give me feedback for me. I meant like, what are you getting? And I was like, but I'm channeling. Do you consider yourself a channel?
That is such an interesting question that I actually have been, if I'm going to be honest, really wrestling with a little bit in recent months, because some people, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's been sort of this whole conversation in the new age, quote unquote, spiritual world that, channeling opens up, you open yourself up to dark forces and you can be hijacked and da 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 da. And the truth is that I, even before that conversation was coming up, I didn't consider myself a channel because I thought that channel meant somebody like who's like a trance channel or like a medium. And that's not how I work. But insofar as I do receive guidance and messages on a regular basis for myself and other people and about the world, yes. And also insofar as a creative artist also. I mean, I can't believe we're all channels, but yes, I do have particular capacities in that realm. I don't necessarily use that word, but yes.
Right. Well, so this is interesting. Like, here we go, this conversation, because we talked about this because we did a trade, a few, and we had this whole thing about this, and I have a lot of opinions about it because I have a lot of opinions about everything. This is a really interesting, juicy topic for people because there's a lot of misconceptions, and then there's experience.
Yep.
And knowledge. My cousin is a trance channel, Stephen Rogat, who I will get on this podcast eventually. He's my second cousin and one of my elders. And he started speaking in his sleep in a different language. And his wife was like, honey. And his name was Michael. And I don't think it's Archangel Michael, but I don't think it's not Archangel Michael, by the way. So I'll have to get clear on that for you because we were just talking about Archangel Michael. Okay. So, and when he channels, he literally has a whole nother voice. I see the ba ba da 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 da, And he can get into that state, and the messages are amazing and profound. I don't have another voice when I bring messages, but I think because I've trained to run energy for so many years from my healing training and whatever, Kundalini, blah, blah, that I know when it's starting to happen. Like there's a couple of things that come in. One is they'll say there's nothing wrong with you. That's always a gate for me. They'll say there's nothing wrong with you when I'm going to channel for someone, and they want me to tell somebody that there's nothing wrong with them. And then all this information comes, which is like rando, like, right? Do you have something that happens when you start channeling that kind of keys you or that you feel, or do you just invoke and then it comes? How do you?
Well, I've up till now, thus far, I have done it intentionally. So I don't sometimes people will say, oh, you're psychic or intuitive. Can you like read my mind right now? And I mean, probably I could to some degree, but that's not how I operate. Like I mean, so far, what I do is I do a particular type of meditation, a divine love meditation, which is adapted from the work of Robert Fritchie at the World Service Institute. It's a healing meditation. And I use that as a portal. And during that meditation, I receive a download. And then that's the beginning of a longer conversation with a person. Or if it's just a friend or family member, that's it. We just do the meditation. I tell them, I receive like a movie. I receive a mini movie in the 2 minutes of the meditation, and I just share it with them. Sometimes I do think it's possible that I'm receiving information at other times that I'm not aware of, because I'm honestly still working through feeling tired sometimes when I'm around people, and certainly if I definitely receive a lot of sort of knowingness or guidance about, frankly, people's psychology and who I can trust and who I can't, and what's going on with people. And I can pick up on a lot of things about relationships and stuff. But I don't get some sort of cue on that.
You literally consciously give permission to get the download.
Yes, then I'm doing a download. Yeah, that's a conscious. I'm going through a whole process to do it.
Yeah. One of the things with Awaken Life Radio that we focus on is people being in spiritual service. It's about, cultivating your intuitive abilities, about self-healing, getting in the flow in your life and with money, and then being of service and understanding that, there's a kind of a process to coming into spiritual service, but it seems really unique to everyone what the process really is.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting over years for me in developing my body of work, like as a process. But over time, I came to understand that it's akin to that spiritual initiations are akin to learning how to crawl before you walk so that you can have balance, Yeah. And, I used to be a massage therapist. And sometimes when I meet other massage therapists and we start talking, I realize that I realized this in the last few years that there's certain initiations that massage therapists go through. Right? Like if you stay with it, like definitely always boundaries. Radical self-care if you want to be sustainable, speaking your truth about money, like self-worth, like all these things. And you work as a channel, right? But you also work as, you call it a women's reclamation coach. Is that right?
Yeah, self-reclamation.
Self-reclamation coach. Okay. And I know the little bit I know about you is that you've been through a lot. You've been through a lot of growth. You've been through a lot of learning. You're a woman who goes really deep. I'm wondering if you could speak about some of the initiations into into leadership with your spiritual gifts that have helped you to really stand in your offerings. Because I feel like a lot of our listeners and people that I serve as well in general, they struggle with that. They struggle. They get so much information and they don't know what to do with it. Some people get overwhelmed by it. And in fact, we're all intuitive, right? We're all intuitive. Let's just leave it at that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you speak about some of the big things that have helped you to start to lean in to
Oh.
reclaiming yourself
Mm-hmm.
in the role of a guide for others, an intuitive guide?
That's a great question. I mean, one of the things was what I would say fairly simple and just quite organic, for lack of a less overused word. And that was that this particular meditation was something that we were doing in my family for years. Anytime somebody was going through surgery or sick or going through something or whatever, we would gather together, maybe 2 of us or 5 of us or whatever, and do it. And I was always getting these mini movies. And so we would always just share what we each received. And I was started to get this feedback from people that what I was sharing with them felt super resonant and accurate for them. So that was the sort of a helpful clue. And then I had another person who is an intuitive. That's her profession. And she said to me, you could do what I'm doing and you should just start. So, yeah.
That's awesome. When I reflect on my path of stepping out into more leadership, I also was told, like, you can't, by my teachers and mentor, and I sought that. And I feel like I don't know if you see that with your clients now, but people seek that, and there's nothing wrong with that, seeking that kind of validation or blessings.
Way showing and encouragement, and for sure, especially for something, I think for something like this, it's becoming more sort of mainstream, but it's still kind of fringe in a way. I mean, if you're at a cocktail party, of course now who has cocktail parties anymore, but you know what I'm saying? The world is in a little bit of a weird place, but
we'll have cocktail parties again.
Yes, we will. Yeah. But you're at some place around a bunch of people, and probably the majority, unless you are at a spiritual conference, a lot of people don't even know what it means when you say you're an intuitive. They don't even know what that means.
Right. It's happening. It's like, oh, you do readings? Can you read me right now?
Yeah, exactly.
You gotta pay me for that shit.
I know. Yeah, exactly. So, but I do think that I think that encouragement and mentorship, and mirroring back, that's important for every human being. I do think it's especially important for women because of, the society. And I think it's even more especially important if you're an artist or a healer or an intuitive. If you're doing something that's a little bit out of the norm, you do need some. It can't be only external validation, but some is helpful. We all need people.
But as simple as it sounds, what you're saying, it can be a confusing point for people on the spiritual journey until they feel like they have a safe, secure connection.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm always, like most of us, are seeking secure attachments.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. And when you meet someone who seems like an emotionally mature or spiritually mature person who you energetically feel like maybe they get you or they see you or they have something for you, and then that person validates you because they could see you, because they're also a deep intuitive. It's like there's something that's sparked, and it could be very simple. It could be very simple, like, hey, I'm really feeling ready. Do you think I'm ready? But I see people really struggle for years and years to emerge. I've struggled with my own emergence, although apparently it's part of like my Myers-Briggs, because I'm like I think I'm an INFJ plus, whatever the thing is, like you're really internal, but you're also an extrovert. So it hasn't been so hard for me to, like, people are like, oh, you're so brave. You just come out. I'm like, that's just who I am. And that's part of the medicine that I have to offer, right? Yeah. It's like, come on, come play. Come on, let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's talk about self-reclamation and how you help women to claim their power. And you guys may or may not know Anne, but Anne has a strong background in acting, in theater, and she's a singer, and you're really, really gifted. And there's ways that I know you work with people that nobody else does.
Yeah, as far as I know, that's true.
Right. I feel like what I do, nobody fully does.
Yeah.
Can you speak about how you work with women and what is self-reclamation and how did you come up on that term, self-reclamation?
Yeah.
How do you help women really claim that,
So I'm going to go in reverse and say how I came up with the term and then how I do it. I came up with it through my own, to use your word, initiation, which was going through a healing process after, hitting a, quote unquote, bottom of some kind, emotionally speaking. And I sought deeper healing assistance around that. And in that process, what occurred for me was that I started to recognize the lies that I'd been living from, that I mostly received from, family and society. And then of course you start to reinforce them over and over in your own head. And you basically lies about who I am or who I was. Right. And then once I could see those and then let go of them, then I was able to reclaim my true self. And the experience was, the way I described it to people was, I retrieved myself from the underworld, like in the Proserpina myth.
Okay, I'm going to jump in.
Yes.
Just for the sake of conversation, for clarity for our listeners.
Yes.
What were some of the lies from the underworld?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Interesting that you get the cue that you get from your guides, because, one of them was, there's something wrong with you. You're broken. To be perfectly blunt, I was told by a person close to me that I was a narcissist at a pretty young age. At probably an age when it's kind of developmentally appropriate to be self, focused.
Right. Then it's like, there's something wrong with me, that I'm the center. I can never be the center of attention. It can't be at me. It always has to be at everyone else.
Yeah.
And then you start like strategizing, and that's a confusing thing to say to a young child.
Yeah. Well, it wasn't a young child, but yeah, an adolescent. It's confusing anyway, regardless.
Yeah. You're an
adolescent. Yeah. So that, or that, also that I also had a sort of a story going that I was too cerebral and like emotionally suppressed and inhibited. That was because of challenges I'd had as an actor. And sometimes in like dating and stuff. A lot of it had to do with having an idea that I was selfish on some level, or self-absorbed. And I had really been working so hard to kind of like do the opposite, that I had kind of overcorrected. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So you were compensating and being like, no, I will please you. No, I'm about you. I'm about you. You know nothing about me. And then you start like ignoring your own needs and sabotaging yourself, and maybe even hurting yourself, or making destructive decisions.
Yes.
Throwing yourself under buses and stuff like that we should not do.
Yeah.
Okay. That we don't have to do, that we do.
No, we don't have to. Yes. So, and then so after I retrieved myself, then that also was sort of catalyzed by and coincided with my parallel growth as an actor. And just seeing how the work of being seen through a story about somebody else, as somebody else, actually gives you tons of space to find and express yourself, right? So that's how so I chose the word self-reclamation because that is what I did for myself with the help of other healers. And then how I work with women is to combine, we do intuitive stuff. We do, reparenting. We do sensuality stuff. We do self-expression stuff. I adapt things from acting for people who are not actors, mostly about expressing different aspects of yourself and being seen, allowing yourself to be seen and take up space. I use my healing I use my singing as a healing, that was a Freudian slip, as a healing modality.
Healing as a
too.
singing. Yeah.
I use my healing as a singing. But it is a process that I take people through. It's sort of a 5-step process that has stages. And it has to do basically with the process that I went through.
Yeah.
And so you're reclaiming yourself and letting go of the lies and reconnecting with who you really are. And then you get to start to see yourself and your life and the people around you and the relationships more clearly. And then you get to start making different choices from a place of clarity and intentionality and empowerment. And then you get to really start to shine and allow yourself to be seen and receive.
Get in the flow. Yeah. Similar to my work, but with your flavor. Yeah. Do you do theater and stuff with people? Like you play out the voice of like a lonely, wild, whiny child or something? Like, do you have people play out archetypes?
Well, to be honest, that hasn't been what I've done so far, but there's no reason why I couldn't.
I want to do that with you.
You can totally do that. I mean, absolutely, because of course that would be also sort of a corollary in a way to internal family systems, reparenting.
I just wonder about playing those just because you speaking about how being somebody else helps you to be seen and like it still touches you.
More of the archetypes that I tend to play with have generally more to do with a lot of the women I work with, because of course we teach what we need to learn, right? Or we teach, the things that we also have had trouble with. So a lot of the women that I work with have, they need permission to be bold, to be assertive, to be, like you use the word wild, to be in their sensuality and like the femme fatale, the bitch, the seductress. Those are the kinds of archetypes that would give a person permission to like play and, use the full color palette. But definitely like the teenager, the little kid, all of those are part of it.
Yeah. Did you do burlesque?
Yeah.
Yeah, I could see that. Oh, yeah. That's so fun.
It's so fun. And I would definitely, I mean, that's not like it's not what I teach. I have a friend actually who does, and she's amazing. And she's that I learned from, but I would really recommend it as a corollary to my work because I found it to be incredibly, I don't know, it was a super empowering experience.
Well, there's so many layers of shame around sexuality that go back just our grandmothers. I mean, not that long ago, and what just wasn't safe. I mean, women couldn't even vote until the 1920, whatever, 20 something.
Yeah. It's so interesting also that you bring up grandmothers because my grandmother, my grandmother on my dad's side, God bless her, was a severe alcoholic. She went to rehab 17 times and never got sober. And that's like super WASP alcoholic land, right? I'm just saying that because it's a stereotype, but it's
part of the stories though. I want to know the stories.
Yeah. And on my mom's side, my grandmother, who's still alive, is a total powerhouse. And she also, my observation of her, not particularly connected to sensuality, the feminine, and frankly, a little bit threatened by its expression in younger generations of the family. Right. So, we've been kind of updating that legacy, but yeah, it's so true that, and also you can see it's confusing. Like I don't know. I don't know, this is random. I don't know why this is coming to my mind, but when I used to live in New York City, I would often see young women, walking around in 5-inch heels and mini skirts and, tons of makeup and their hair done and whatever. And they're like drunk, they're walking around drunk on the sidewalk in New York City at night. That's dangerous.
Very.
So I'm not saying that's dangerous as in if something happens to her, it's her fault. I'm not saying that. But I am saying that I do think as a culture, we are still really in the process of figuring out how do we as women fully embody and express and live in the power that we hold and that is our birthright, and still take care of ourselves and have healthy boundaries. And then men have a whole other journey around it, which is complementary. And then of course there's a completely different journey if you're non-binary or, but my point is it's complicated.
It's really complicated.
Yeah.
And we're doing really big work. Those of us that are choosing to do work in our lifetimes for hundreds of thousands and thousands of generations of humanity. It's very big. I have this question coming in. It must have an answer because I'm giving myself the chills thinking about it. Awesome. I'm just thinking about it. I'm getting the chills. I also do embodiment work, and it's like, well, what does my womb say? What is the energy am I feeling? What do I need right now? What's the desire? And we work with that, right? And like really finding it and naming it and like honoring the shame and loving it and letting it go on its own and finding what's on the other side, all that really good, deep, conscious embodiment work. But where my mind is spiraling now is how, like you, we both are really love, channeling and working with these spiritual energies. And yet we're really into like the sensual embodiment frequencies. So, and maybe the answer is in frequency. But like, why would we be tuning into spiritual energy to help us to get in touch with our sensual energy? Right? Because
why would we be doing that?
Yeah, like why does the spiritual energy help us to be embodied if the spiritual energy is out of body, or spiritual energy is, I think of spiritual energy as light, as divine light, really. Mm-hmm. But isn't that interesting? Like, why not just go, well, what does my body need? What does my body want? What's my intuition? What do I feel? What do I know? What's the stories? Like, why do we need to be disembodied or go far away from our bodies to get knowledge about being on the path of embodying love?
Well, that's such an interesting question. It's always an ongoing process, right? And honestly, lately I've been working with this heart resonance practice from my friend Seth Przansky. It's very similar to Joe Dispenza, but it's his own version that he basically created himself while in prison and sick, and it's a whole thing. Amazing. You should have him on your podcast.
Yeah, but anyway, introduce me. Yeah, sounds good.
So he, so that practice is very much about like the heart as part of the body and the breath. Mm-hmm. And so that's been interesting for me because I have for a long time tuned in more to like the womb space and, like I hope it's okay to say pussy on this, or yoni.
It's okay to say pussy.
Okay. Like, so those areas, right? Okay. So that being said, I don't see it as, for my experience is actually not that I go disembodied. When I go disembodied, it's because I'm receiving messages, but I'm not conscious of it. And then I start to get dizzy and tired. But when I'm in the practice of, it's also part of the reason why I do work the way I do with the channeling. I have like a grounding thing I do. I have certain breathing that I do. So I feel like I'm creating a container, and my body feels different when I'm in that space than when I'm just talking to somebody. I'm more in my body when I'm doing that.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I can say that also if I'm running my energy or tuning into, big part of my work is working also similarly. It's actually integrating the heart and the spirit and the third eye and the root chakras and your higher self. It's like about working with having all parts of you have a conversation. So I get that. And I know that there's a value to grounding light because we are made of light and we're connecting to like parallel universes and our whole timeline of our reincarnation cycles when we work with light too. But it's just, I don't know, it just struck me. I never asked that question before, thought of that question before, really.
Yeah. And I do have another thought about it.
Yeah. Let's hear it.
I don't think it's what I just said, but also I mean, of course, we don't know the answer to that, right? But I suspect that it's partially to do with, well, my suspicion is that we're here in bodies on purpose, right? So if we're here in bodies on purpose, then being in our body is part of the divine plan, right? So, for example, my friend Megan Watterson always says the body is our chance to be here.
Yeah.
And I just love that. So maybe the reason is because whatever that divine guidance, wisdom is that we're channeling wants us to connect to our sensuality and our, and also
it wants to experience it.
Right? Yeah, wants to experience it and also wants us to go through the process of developing discernment around that, right? Like, where are we connected and where do we flip over to using sexuality in a way that's disconnected? I mean, it's, you know what I'm saying? It's very layered.
Yeah. Well, what I'm hearing from you is sparking an awareness of a whole timeline.
All
right.
Okay.
We're back. I'm seeing a whole timeline of humanity as we talk because you activate me like that. So it's because my mentor Lania, who also will be on this podcast, Lania Desmond, she taught me, and I found it to be true over many years as I went through life's initiations, as I continue to go through life's initiations, that the being in the body is the way to connect with spirit, and that we don't have to try to fly out in the universe to connect to spirit, but actually the keys are here. I also had an enlightenment teacher that taught that, and my yoga lineage as well really brings in the embodiment of our different koshas and energy bodies, etc. So I'm having a kind of like an intuitive memory flash that there's some template in my memory where we were not separate from spirit, right? It's in, could be in the Bible, Zion, it's in, all these traditions that understand it. In my own experience of being in nature, when you feel really blissful and connected and loving and clear and fresh, and that we were able to have all these gifts, right? Like I remember, like we were psychic, telepathic, we'd have visions. The whole village would dream something at the same time. Now, once in a while when it happens, it's like, whoa, it's like you're at a cocktail party and you're like, oh yeah, I'm a healer and I'm a coach. Oh, really? Do you do readings? Whoa, that's so cool. It's like, it's actually just like natural, right? But if we weren't so distracted and poisoning ourselves, then we would be feeling and sensing in these deep intuitive knowing ways. And I'm also remembering that we used to all be able to see auras, like it wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
And that the way to do that, I'm getting the chills again. Now I give myself the chills these days. Is that narcissistic? Anyway. I was watching this show with my niece last night, and it's what's it called? They're so up on pop culture. They're so much better at pop culture than I am. But there's like these different incarnations of this being, and then they met, and they like were falling in love. And he was like a power grabber, and they were like about to kiss, and she's like, "No!" My niece is an indigo; she's like really brilliant, and I like bow to her. And she's like, "No!" I'm like, "Why? What's wrong?" She's like, "That is so narcissistic." He's like, "He's falling in love." I'm like, but isn't it self-love? And she's like, no, because he's a power grabber. And if he's a power grabber, then it's narcissistic. And there's a difference between narcissism and self-care. And I'm like, okay. And so I'm like, okay. Yeah. Anyway, so in our in our timelines, we have this knowing, right?
Yeah.
Right. We have this knowing. So is it that simple that us that are like on the healing path? Well, there's also the shadow, right? Like, I want to be out of my body. Like, I want anywhere but here. So I'm going to alter my mind. I went through that. Like, I can't believe how fearless I was with drugs in my early 20s. I mean, it'd be like, oh, here's some cocaine. Okay, here's some LSD. I'll just eat it. Like, who knows what was in that stuff, you know? But I was like, whoa, the world is so beautiful, you know? And then after I started detoxing from all of that and going in and, you know, really connecting to that magic and the awakening my third eye and visions and understanding I was a dreamer, I started to crave the communion with spirit, you know? And so I'm just sitting with that because I want our listeners to be able to have clarity to bridge that gap between longing for communion, but also finding peace in the nectar of their pleasure. You talk a lot about pleasure.
Yeah.
How do you work with your people to merge their sensuality with their spiritual connection? Do you teach them the channeling, or how do you do that?
Well, okay. First off, I just want to say that your timeline visions have some similarities to my future timeline possibility visions that I get as like our highest possibility, you know, which gives me hope because the world is like in such a weird place right now. But I just keep getting that type of thing. But anyway, we'll talk about
Thank you. No, that's really good. I've been told that I'm from the future.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. Keep going.
Anyway, so I'm going to say something that's super concrete. So one exercise that I have women do if they're having trouble trusting themselves and think they're not intuitive or whatever, is I literally have them close their eyes, imagine a flower in their womb space, whatever flower comes to mind or what comes to the womb, whatever flower shows up is the perfect flower. And then I have them see what state the flower is in and then bring to mind one option, like they have a decision to make. So I have them bring to mind one option and then see what happens to the flower and then let that option go and then bring another option up to mind and see what happens to the flower. And also some people are visual, some people aren't, but most people either see something happen to the flower or they feel something different. So for me, they're really not, I mean, I guess that's not really pleasure in sort of the most literal sense of the word, but so first off, I do think that flowers are super pleasurable.
Oh yeah. And it connects your third eye in your womb.
Yeah, exactly.
And it used to be these psychic schools, they would always work with roses, right? Like, what is the rose doing? And is the rose wilting or what color is it? Yeah.
Oh, really? I didn't know that because I totally made that up.
Oh, no, that came to, no, I learned that from some of my friends that are psychics and a psychic class I took one time, and then I didn't resonate with all of the things. So I backed away from it. But it was like, you imagine, Rose, what is it doing?
Yes.
And what does it look like to check in on your state? But it's just holding that third eye. So connecting what's in the womb is beautiful.
Yeah, I really love that. Well, and also I will say I created that, but like in the moment for some, but it is inspired partially by the work of Tammy Lynn Kent. Because she, in her book, Wild Feminine, she has a few different books, but anyway, she does a lot of stuff around the menstrual cycle and the womb. And she does have this visualization that involves making a flower offering into your womb space in this visualization. I think that planted the seed. But basically I just feel that it's, I mean, to be honest, that's a very rich topic that we could have a whole other conversation.
We're going to do another conversation. We're going to
on again. Speaking, it's like there are so many different practices.
Yes.
And they all sort of interweave. And also, I think it comes from I have a mindset that it's connected. And that a woman's connection to her spirituality is related to her connection to her body.
Absolutely. Of course. Right? Of course. Yeah. One of my teachers taught this really wonderful thing about third eye in the womb that has me, which is that, that you communicate with your baby through your third eye. The baby speaks to you through your third eye because you're telepathic. And will you tell us about how people can follow up with you?
Well, the easiest way, the place where I update the most is on Instagram at Ann C. Moller. So that's ANNC as in cat, M as in Mary, OLLER. And my website is AnnMollerTheMuse.com.
Fabulous. I will post those below. Thank you so much.
You too.
Can't wait to do more soon.
Me too. This is really fun. Great to see you. Your hair looks fabulous.
Thank you. If you enjoyed listening to today's episode, and I sure hope you did, you can listen to Awaken Life Radio wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. To join the conversation, hop on over to our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/Awakened Life Tribe. You can join us there and share any thoughts, feelings, insights, or questions that you have from listening to Awaken Life Radio, and we can interact and connect more. Also, in order to support you in your manifesting journey, you can now access 12 manifesting affirmations, a free gift available now on my website at narayanigaya.com/free-gift. Thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you more. Namaste.